NFL Week 16, and I'm here with Ron. Our weekly show is going to be a shortened show because I have to be at a scan at 1:30 local time, so I've got to be there before 1:30. So we're going to have to consolidate issues this week. There's lots to talk about. What's going on in your end, Ron? I'm still preparing here.
Well, this time of the year it gets really busy, and those of us who originate on our own, do our own power ratings, do everything regarding the stats in the NFL, and then have to deal with all the chaos in college. It really gets crazy this time of year. I'm just trying to keep my head above water and do all the right things to make all the right decisions.
I don't know how we can keep up with it all. Honestly, it's beyond ridiculous. There's just so many moving parts, and everything's coming to a head all at once. And as the NFL season goes through, it's more complicated. Injuries. Now we're looking at weather, motivation. If you're going to add college football into the mix, then I don't even know. Like for me personally, I'm doing jack shit on college football at the moment, just because the transfer portals and motivations there. What am I supposed to do? I wait till game day and deal with it at that point in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it's sad that it's almost coming to an end in terms of the edges that one used to have in the bowls. It wasn't that long ago that you and I went on this magical run for a couple of years where we lost. I had a 37-4 run in college, and that's going to be gone. Because it's just so hard to do this. We have 3 times as many portal entries already this year. Actually 4 times as many as last year, and then 10 or 12 times the year before. I'm trying it. This will be the test case to whether or not this will be the last year for extensive college bowl work. We'll see what happens. It's crazy.
It's really affecting my interest in it, frankly.
That makes sense. I will say the playoff games are interesting, and there's obviously less portal movement there. I guess what Cris says in the chat is, since you and Ted held down the fort so well on Thursday, if you want to delete me from the show, I'd pick up like an hour of time. Time management is good, but Ted and Cris are always going to hold their own and do good things without me.
Yeah, we did have a good show on Thursday. Everything went smoothly. Okay, I've got my spreadsheets downloaded. So how was your week? How was your week 15?
So the thing that I always do is do that last week autopsy. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What shouldn't I have done? So the good thing I did was eliminate betting on bad teams last week. I ignored the Jets-Jacksonville game because, as it turned out, the game was a coin flip with the Jets either kicking a field goal or scoring a touchdown at the end. That was crazy. Eliminated the Tennessee game, whoever they played against Cincinnati, because Tennessee was probably going to shoot themselves in the foot. So I got off of those games. Situational analysis didn't work as well last week. The Lions were in a good scheduling situation. We know what happened to their defense. There was another situation that I liked with New England. That didn't work out. The matchup situations really worked. Having Houston in that game against Miami was a tremendous matchup advantage, and starting to get a real good handle on the Chargers as far as what teams they match up with and what teams they do not match up with, and had a good position on Tennessee. It was as modest as you can in terms of a win last week. So really wasn't much of anything. But in the autopsy, Cris, I would not change any of the plays that I made.
I had a strange week where I think my betting cost me. So it went, let's see. The sides went 0-1. 1-1, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 5-1, 5-2, 6-2, 7-2, and I did not come remotely close to doing that well with my alternative betting. So got to kind of do some autopsy. And it was a really strange week how things laid out, time wise and game important wise. And I really should have fared better than I did betting. So this is the first time in memory that I remember that my alternative betting had not enhanced my week. It cost me this week. It was still a profitable week, but it should have been better. So just want to, acknowledge that disappointment. Obviously, with a great week, win-loss, the contest went well. 15 picks left. Excited about that. Looking ahead at this, I don't see anything about it. Looking back at Thursday, where everything started, what was that game? Was it 12-6? Yeah. Oh, they kicked that stupid field goal at the end. It was 16 seconds left. That cost me. Every single year you get these teams that just make these late season runs, and now we've got the Rams back in first place. Are you buying the Rams Kool-Aid, or what's your feeling after this San Francisco game?
So some of the in-season futures that I made, like New England under 6.5 and so on, were really good. This is one I didn't do, even though you heard me talking about this about 4 weeks ago. I said the Rams are right there. They're going to play everybody at the end of the year. San Francisco, we knew about their injuries. I didn't see Seattle going on that magical of a run that they did, but they got into first place. Arizona, after that bye week, we talked about this. Arizona was going to regress after the bye. They lost that forward momentum. The Rams were right there. So, yes, I do buy the Rams, but I didn't buy the Rams. That might have been a regret because I do think they're going to win the division.
Yeah, I guess they should. Who they?
They're going to host Seattle soon.
Washington and the Saints. We complain about these refs, and they keep getting worse and worse and worse. And I had Washington money line, and I had them teased down to pick or -0.5, but that was costly. And it would have been just horrendous to my betting card if the Saints had converted that 2-point conversion. The Saints played much better with Rattler. And I don't know who they're using this coming week, but that was probably the case because Washington's just unprepared for that quarterback. He has a little, Philadelphia will be better prepared for both quarterbacks. What do you think?
I choose to look at this game, a game I didn't play, in the sense that Washington didn't put them away. At the beginning of the game, rested off the bye, they looked like they're going to blow New Orleans out, and they kind of let them back in the game. I thought defensively they did improve some from previous weeks. I thought they're showing some progress, but there's still a gap between them and being a true playoff team, even though they're going to make the playoffs. So I do think that Washington was the better team, but it's a work in progress still for Washington. They have to learn how to win. The game got close, not really because of the refs, but it was because of Washington's taking the pedal off the metal offensively. I thought they got highly conservative. You see the number of completions Daniels had and the number of passing yards, and they really weren't testing the waters.
Yeah, you actually summed it up in an important way. The game doesn't come down to the final seconds, technically. And we're seeing this over and over again We saw it last night with the Raiders. Atlanta wasn't able to put the Raiders away, and they lived to tell about it. But every single week we're in the same position where, teams let other teams back into the game, and it's stressful on the better side. I'll tell you that.
Dan has a question about the bye weeks. And for me, experienced teams with late bye weeks like Baltimore, it's a nice advantage to have that. The teams with new coaches and stuff, they need the early bye weeks because if they have a late bye week, it's too late for them to really make enough adjustments. So I like when experienced teams like Baltimore get that week off late.
I was surprised that Miami got the pregame betting support that they had. And I don't say that as a, like a na thing, because Houston really didn't play well, and Miami very well could have covered that game. But nevertheless, I just didn't see any metrics remotely favoring Miami being able to cover that, and people were all over them.
Yeah, this was my top play of the week. Not by much, but my top play of the week. I agree with you completely. Situationally, there was not really an advantage other than a reset for the quarterback with the bye week. But in terms of the matchup analysis, it really stood out in Houston's favor. And the back door, unfortunately, got open because of something that happened in the fourth quarter. That was another one of those cases where Houston was definitely the right side, but one fluke play away from not covering.
Well, just happy to get through that game. I'm shocked with how bad people think Houston is. I mean, where do you have Houston at this point?
I have them as markedly improving defensively. From a power rating standpoint, they're kind of in the 8th range. There's a whole bunch of teams tied with them. I mean, a whole bunch of teams tied with them. So they might be like 6 to 10, 5 to 9, 6 to 10 or whatever. So they're not up in the elite group, but I like the progression they're making, and I have them stronger defensively than probably a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said about their climbing defensively. I have them near the top the last 30 days. And
yeah,
offensively, they're, above middle of the road. And then for the season, let's see. And overall, over the last 5 weeks, they're certainly solidly in the top 10.
I don't think we're going to sweep on them because last week I mentioned who was Super Bowl worthy, and they were one of the 4 teams that were Super Bowl worthy based on their metrics, and so you can't discount them.
I can't figure it out because I'm seeing just a lot of sports content that just writes Houston off, and I'm not saying that. I'm not as enthusiastic about them as like the Green Bay wave people.
Yeah.
By any means. But the way that Houston's being disrespected and forgotten about is shocking to me.
Well, I think it's a good point because they have some characteristics of quality teams. They have an emerging quarterback. They have a running back, Joe Mixon, who has experience and does not fumble. They have a game breaker in Nico Collins. They have a defensive coach's mindset in terms of what they do with their pass rush. They have the number 1 percentage pass D in the NFL. So they have a lot of characteristics that translate.
The problem's their offense. He keeps on running on first down, right?
But I agree with the comment Bertie just made about the offensive line. That's an area that they will need to address. They started off the year with some injuries, but overall it's kind of an average unit, and they have allowed 42 sacks, which is below average. So if there was one area I'd say there are 2 areas you could pick on. One is the offensive line, and the other is I would like to see them get a quality tight end in the mix. They can get production out of that position, but if they had one of those special tight ends, it would really elevate them.
Well, the problem is that they're getting into too many long situations because they keep running the ball predictably from what I gather.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
But their defense is okay.
Oh, yeah. No problems.
Jets, Jaguars. It was a scary game to bet. I bet it anyway. Lived to tell about it. I learned nothing.
Pass.
Bengals, Titans. Wanted nothing to do with it. I was forced to bet Cincinnati. Lived to tell about it. I learned nothing.
Yeah, those are the scary ones. But at one point or another, a team like Tennessee is going to make a decision that they're going to regret. And that whole Will Levis turnovers and all that other stuff, you just can't repeat that week after week after week. And I mentioned after the game that Tennessee could be a team in the market for a quarterback because they have growing doubts about Will Levis's ability to improve.
Well, it's just amazing how the Tides, obviously the Denver game's another game, but Tennessee had a 14-7 lead. They go in for a touchdown also and have that called back or something, and then the next thing you know, they're just getting. Maybe I'm confusing that, but they were on their way just to a 21-7 lead and blew it.
Yeah, and the 37-27 score is misleading anyway because they scored on the last play of the game. So once Cincinnati took control, they took total control.
Baltimore and the Giants. Baltimore showed up. They came out of the bye. All is good. Giants trying to get through the season. That's about it, right?
Yeah, 15-7 against the spread against the bye. After the bye for Baltimore, and the Giants lose another game at home. They're just completely unplayable at home.
Amazing. Kansas City and Cleveland. You know what? Something kind of told me I had more confidence laying in Kansas City being able to cover, even though they had 7 against the spread losses in a row. I just had a funny feeling that they were going to be able to do it. I guess we learned that they're going to give up on Winston finally. DTR is going to be starting this week. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, I did hear that before. It's one of the many circled games I have this week. I have 8 power rating circled because of quarterback or key player uncertainty. It's a mash unit. Winston was just one of the issues this past week. This was the second most interceptions thrown on a Sunday. 51 interceptions in 13 games on Sunday by quarterbacks. That means every game had just about 4 interceptions in it. Very, very, very sloppy. I expected more points in this game. I bet the over. But unfortunately, Winston's turnovers were in the other team's red zone instead of in his own red zone. So did not get points out of that. But I too thought it's possibly a good spot for Kansas City. Wasn't going to play it. But
what was the score in that game? Cleveland didn't cover the spread, did they?
No, 21-7.
So Rivera, you go put down the crack pipe and check the scores. Dallas and Carolina. This is another game. That nagged me because Dallas was the second strongest play I had last week, and I didn't use it as much as I should have. I excluded it from some, in a lot of ways, but I did bet it, but I was afraid to bet it straight.
This is one of those that I'm glad I laid off on. I thought, do I really want to take Carolina as a favorite? There are some situational issues that put them in. Do I want to put them in a money line? I said, no, I really don't want to do any of that. So I would have, if you told me, if I had to pick a side, I would have picked Carolina. But it was evident from the beginning that Dallas has finally centered on what their running game is going to look like. And they got some mileage out of the running game against Carolina. And I think, we don't always praise coaches like McCarthy, but he found a weakness in Carolina and he exploited it.
It's very strange how just I can't figure out how these groups are getting on these bad sides that not only are bad, but they're never even in doubt. There's groups betting the Bengals under every week. They were all over Carolina last week. They've been all over the Jets all year, just to name a few. And I just find it, and each time it's like always like solidly against what my model's saying, and your model agrees most of the time with mine, and I don't know where it comes from. Left field.
Yeah, I mean, like the Jets, for example, who've been favored something like 10 times this year, at some point you have to realize there's stuff going on that aren't even in the metrics, where the Jets don't care. They've got an interim coach. All those interim staff members know they're gone. They fired their GM. There's a lot of disarray with the Jets, and it spills onto the field when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers involved. The safest thing with the Jets is him and Adams are just going to play, a twosome kind of thing. Yeah, Adams is going to get his yards and everything, and everybody else is going to have to wait their turn.
Steelers and Eagles. We had Watt got hurt. That's no good.
That's serious.
I think this is only the second time it's happened, like in this century. Pittsburgh only got the ball twice in the second half. Were you aware of that?
Oh, I didn't even know. I did know that Philly got the ball at their own 3 with about 10 minutes left, and Pittsburgh never saw the ball.
They yes, exactly. They ran a 13-minute drive, and they didn't even score. So the issue obviously is you don't want to get behind with Philadelphia because they're going to grind you out.
I love how Howie Roseman's always been able to build this team, but they really addressed that fatal flaw, their secondary. Bad matchup for Russell Wilson going against that secondary this past week. And Philadelphia forces you to be so one-dimensional because teams are afraid to run on them. And in the end, Philadelphia has their way as long as they're clicking offensively. They basically need both wide receivers to be healthy and playing, and then Philadelphia can score some points. And they have Barkley too, so they closed the deal as well. It was a great matchup indicator for Philadelphia, and they took care of business.
Well, it's there's rumbling. There may be more damage coming out of that game than we realize. A.J. Brown is obviously banged up, and Barkley is kind of mum on what's going on with him. We don't know what's going on. But obviously with what happened with Detroit, you can't favor Detroit anymore coming out of the NFC, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, there were some questions about Dan Campbell and his decisions. I actually agreed with his decision to go for it on that 4th down. Early decisions about fake punts or whatever else he did was stupid, but that's Dan Campbell. But when they were down in the late 3rd or early 4th quarter, or I think it was early 4th quarter, and they decided to do that onside kick, I agreed with that because Buffalo wasn't going to punt. They weren't going to punt in this particular game. Josh Allen was having his way. The Lions have, even before injuries, the Lions have a problem in the secondary. I don't know if it's coaching, It seemed like they drafted, their first 2 picks were defensive backs, just like Phillies. But how come Phillies picks are performing better than the Lions picks? Can't all be Vic Fangio. So something's going on with Detroit, and now they lost Montgomery, their goal line touchdown guy. There's so many injuries right there. Yeah, I don't know. You know the team better than most. How do they play their way out of this? And is what Dan Campbell does on a daily, weekly basis in his play calling sustainable?
Well, it sounds, the real problem is how stupid the call the fake onside kick rule is. I mean, what do they think?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, seriously, it's that's what's really frustrating about that. But he didn't trust the defense. He said that in the postgame. He said, "I can't trust the defense." So if you can't get a stop, might as well give yourself. I mean, might as well give yourself a shot at the ball. What everybody wants to talk about with the game is the Lions, and it's like, and crown Buffalo for doing something. Buffalo's defense sucks.
Yeah, I think we've been saying that.
Buffalo's defense is the second worst. It's worse than Detroit's over the last 5 weeks. So anybody that's sitting there riding high on Buffalo, your fucking defense is worse than Detroit's. So
yeah, we've been saying that. I when I questioned you 2 weeks ago that I had Buffalo's defense 23rd or whatever, I was too high. Everybody said, "Wait a second." It turns out I was too high.
But yeah, Detroit is. The other notes of interest is, how'd you like to lose the over 775 and a half yards prop on Montgomery? He finished at 775.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was tweeted out this morning by a half a yard.
Well, I wish I had that under, since I only bet unders, but I don't think that's one in my portfolio.
And then somebody else was talking about some monster payout, parlay payout that only lost because of Taylor's no TD, because he needed Taylor's TD in Indianapolis.
Oh yeah, well, IQ tests for people who decide to drop the ball before they're 5 yards into the end zone. I mean, you guys are paid some money. Don't showboat.
I'll tell you, this is it just goes to show you, when you're running well, you're running well. And last year wasn't running well. And every single week, it was just nonsense. And I look at this week, and Detroit covers a critical teaser at the end of that game for me. If Taylor goes in Indianapolis was dominating Denver. How the hell did Denver cover that? Yeah. New Orleans doesn't get the 2-point conversion. The Texans could have given it up. I'm looking at these games and how fortunate that, I've been having a good run. It could have been going the other way. It'd be nice if it was a little bit more 50-50. It seems like everything or nothing goes my way. So, but I know a lot of people are having bad years, and I'm having a good year, and acknowledging that, getting a lot of lucky breaks.
For straight bettors, last week was a weird one because there were so many games completely out of control. There were very few decisions made. You say, yeah, the Jets got a touchdown instead of a field goal. That was a coin flip game. The Jets really weren't 7 points better than the Jaguars. The whole Washington thing, if you laid 7.5, that would have been, that play was involved. But there were so many games that were over by the start of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't fare as well, because when I was evaluating games, there's no way in hell Indianapolis should have, not at least been in teaser range, and somehow they ended up out of teaser range. And the Bears, probably should have been in teaser range, and that was no good. And Seattle could have been in teaser range under the better circumstances. It just a lot of wide decisions. Tampa Bay, boy, that was a big surprise. My model was close to having the Chargers. I'm glad I didn't get involved in that game either way.
Yeah, the matchup analysis, when I looked at it, I said the Chargers right now are incomplete in terms of going against a quarterback like Baker Mayfield. And it was a game we discussed last week on Tuesday, and I said, just give me 3 points either way. And as I looked into it, I said, well, okay, that's fine. I like Tampa +3 because I think they're going to win the game. I just, the way Baker Mayfield plays and the way the Chargers have had trouble against passing teams, the Chargers are best when they can dictate the line of scrimmage to their satisfaction. And they will get better at this. This is just year one with a roster that Harbaugh, kind of was gifted to them from the previous people. And we know he beats up on the teams he should beat up on. But Tampa's a different style team. And again, Baker Mayfield and Tampa, they're going to beat me in the season win total absolutely fair and square because they're doing all the right things. They're making all the right decisions when the game's on the line.
Yeah, I know that we discussed it weeks and weeks ago that people were ridiculing Tampa Bay, and it's like, no, trust me, they're better than Atlanta, and I think that's very clear now.
Very clear, and I told you on air that I was hedging my underplay, and I only hedged it about 20%, so that doesn't count as a real hedge. But I have a ticket on Tampa to win the division, which was made prior to their, I think, right at the beginning of their win streak, when I saw what was going on with the opponent's face, with the bye week and everything. And that's a good ticket. It's not a guaranteed win. Atlanta's right there, and Atlanta has the tiebreaker edge. But I think it's a ticket that has value.
The Patriots, I'm surprised they came out of the bye like they did.
Yeah, I lost that game.
I was not involved in that game, but I would have been on the Patriots. I just had too many other things. If it had been, if I wasn't as busy with all the other stuff, I probably would have put something on the Patriots. But I was reading some stuff this morning that the coach is the problem there.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah, that's that. Some defensive-minded coaches trust their offense, do different things. DeMeco Ryans is a really good coach at Houston. But some of these guys, Vegas, when they're going for 3 points at the 2-yard line, when all the metrics say 4th and goal at the 2, you don't go for 3 points in the NFL anymore. And that's the style that New England tends to play too. I definitely think they need to make some changes there. They need to draft better. Drake May went 19 out of 23, and they didn't get mileage out of that. So there's some progress being made. My bet was made early when I was able to get a soft 7, and I thought that was the right call. And again, autopsy, I'd make it again, but you're right about the coaching.
I was surprised the Seahawks did not fare better, although I had Green Bay. Wish the game had been closer, but
yeah. Green Bay may be underestimated in my mind, and their power rating is such that I have them ahead of a lot of teams, including Minnesota. Do you have Green Bay ahead of Minnesota?
Well, Green Bay's number 1, and look who's number 2. Rams are number 2 the last 5 weeks. Tampa number 3.
Makes sense.
Baltimore and Dallas around that. Let's see for the season though. Yeah, Green Bay and Minnesota aren't close.
Yeah, so everybody's looking at Minnesota's run and stuff like that, and quietly, not so quietly to me, it's Green Bay that's making better strides.
Yeah, I've got Green Bay in pretty darn high. Pretty darn high.
Yeah, I got to see if I have them as high as fourth, even. Of course, everybody's circled right now, so I don't know how to deal with that. 4, 5. No, they're not. That's like 5, 5, 5. Green Bay. Oh my goodness, I have Green Bay way up there.
Who do you have rated higher, Green Bay or Buffalo?
Buffalo.
Mm.
But I have Green Bay fourth overall, I believe. 1. Oh, I don't even want to. Yeah, fourth overall. So that's, I mean, they have not been in my top 5 until this week.
You have Buffalo higher than that?
Yeah, I have Buffalo 1 point higher than Green Bay. Their offense is incredible. So on neutral ground, I would make Buffalo 1 against Green Bay.
Okay.
And you know, and it's funny because I have Buffalo as my top rated team, which shows you Green Bay is my 4th rated team, and they're only 1 point difference.
Yeah, there's a mishmash of value there that's hard to determine. But Green Bay's made a huge jump.
Good conversation.
Oh boy, the Bears really are that bad.
Yeah, they may have quit.
I don't understand what's wrong with the Vikings, though. That was a crucial game for me in a lot of ways, and they very well could have. The score was not indicative of realistically, in my opinion, the Vikings were not nearly impressive. They weren't impressive at all.
Well, I thought they had a chance to kill Chicago early, but they abandoned the run game. Did you see the gashed holes at the beginning of that game? Aaron Jones was running right down the center of the line for 7-8 yards, but Darnold passed at a more than 2 passes per rush ratio in the first 20 minutes of the game, and that was wrong.
Yeah, I didn't understand it because it wasn't like he was getting a mountain of protection or anything. And
no,
I don't know what there's something off with the talent that's on that team and how they're working it. I mean, if you gave Ben Johnson those players, my God, there's just something wrong there.
Yeah, I like their coach, but the strategy in this game, because you're kind of right that Minnesota didn't look right, that Chicago could have been in that game. But if Minnesota had played it right, Chicago would never have been in that game. It took a long time, I think, for them to realize that. Why are we having Darnold pass 30 times when Chicago's getting beaten time and again at the line of scrimmage in the run game?
That kind of reminds me of my dumb play of the week. I had the Lions under.
Yeah. Well, you just thought it was the Lions under. It wasn't both teams, right?
My Lord. Just before, all I know is the very moment I glanced at the first play, it's like Buffalo's already ready to score. I'm like, so much for that one.
I don't have much to say about Atlanta, Vegas. I mean, Vegas is going nowhere, and Atlanta, they don't trust Kirk Cousins. He throws for 111 yards, and they don't want Kirk Cousins to throw a pass over 5 yards.
Well, and even late in the game, he's throwing dumb passes. You know what? They got saved because they called that roughing the passer play, and I was like, "Thank goodness."
God!
and I was embarrassed to accept that in my head. It's like I needed it really bad, and I'm like, it's embarrassing even in your own thoughts that you got that benefit.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we got some quarterbacks to talk about that plays into this week. And that's, starting with Kansas City and Mahomes. Do you think he goes? They're dogs.
Uh, I think it's been pretty clear that they don't want him to go. I think that they should sit him, whether he wants to play or not. Whether he'll want to play, it's the same injury he played with last year through injury. So,
Yeah, I think he sits because they have a 2-game lead, and the NFL has scheduled them for a Saturday game off a Sunday game, and then a Wednesday game off a Saturday game. So they got the dreaded 3 games in 11-day kind of situation. I think he sits, and I think the odds reflect that. Complete change of style in Cleveland with DTR at quarterback instead of Winston. How do you think that affects that game at first glance?
I'm surprised you didn't move the line down. Wouldn't you think they're better with DTR?
My first impression is that, although it's Cincinnati, so this is a hard impression, but in general, if you take Winston out of the equation, maybe the game, you should shave a couple points off the total, that it won't go as high because DTR is going to run. He's going to run 7, 8, 9 times in this particular game. But because it's Cincinnati and Joe Burrow, maybe the number just stays high.
Well, I saw it open at 50.5. It's as low as 46.5.
Okay, so it is moving then, not just weather, although these teams play in weather. We talked about Tennessee.
I'll get to this question after Ron's topic.
Okay. Geno Smith may or may not go. And what I saw of Sam Howell was disappointing, not because Sam Howell can't stretch the field and he threw 600 passes last year, but his internal clock is not good. And so you've got Minnesota and you have that coordinator going against Seattle. If Sam Howell has to go, my initial impression is that Sam Howell has to be coached to throw the ball quicker.
It was futile. I was rooting for Seattle to get back in teaser range, and it was like hopeless.
Yeah, deer in headlights. He's had all season to prepare. You're always one play away as a backup quarterback. And he looked like he had not thrown 600 passes the year before. So that's concerning to me. Geez,
yeah,
Desmond.
Because when I heard Smith was out, because I wasn't watching at the point where Smith went out, and I heard Howell was, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, at least the guy's got experience, and
Yeah.
I'll bet you there's some third string quarterbacks on rosters that would have fared better.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed. I know it's an incredibly short and quick sample size, but I expected better. Desmond Ridder, not an exciting. I mean, this is Atlanta, and it looked like he was running the 10-minute drill instead of the 2-minute drill at the end of the game. It was an Alex Smith type performance without Alex Smith's experience in throwing 5-yard passes over the middle.
You know what? That's completely out of my wheelhouse.
Well, I mean, it's just another reason why. Oh boy, you got Jacksonville and Vegas next week, this coming week. What a game! It's just going to be crazy. What do you know about Alvin Kamara switching away from quarterbacks? He got banged up.
Yeah, I know. I'm behind on that info too.
If anybody who's listening or watching has an insight into Alvin Kamara, New Orleans this week plays on Monday. Okay, he plays on Monday, so he does get an extra day because that's important because you're going to have a young quarterback in that particular setting, maybe in cold weather, of course.
That's going to be a weather game too at night in Green Bay.
Yeah. Speaking of weather games, you've got the Detroit Lions outdoors.
And with no Montgomery. Ugh.
With no Montgomery and a lot of defensive issues. as the Lions, how do you prepare for that game, and what should be your game plan there? Because Gibbs has been best as a tandem back, and you don't always want him to run between the tackles, but we've seen that Chicago is very vulnerable between the tackles.
Yeah, it's a little frightening. You can't run Gibbs, hard. You can't run him 25 times.
No.
So that they are on the hunt. They're on the old practice squad hunt again. I don't know what they're going to do on it. I mean, they're decimated. I mean, have you seen the list? They have the Detroit poll was, would you rather have the defense that's on the IR, or would you rather have the defense that's remaining?
IR for sure, because Hutchinson's on it.
For sure. I mean, you have an all-pro, practically an all-pro roster on the on the DL for the Lions right now.
I mean, some of those guys in the secondary are underachieving, but you have Hutchinson on the DO. You have that try-hard guy, Rodriguez, who I liked out of the draft, who makes tackles, who's involved in a lot of different things. You have a better roster on IR.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we're Lions fans are just doomed.
Well, it's shaping up as a more interesting race now because Green Bay is formidable from the wild card spot. Philadelphia is going to try to take over the number 1 seed. Minnesota is going to try to give Detroit all it could handle, and they have an interesting game at Seattle. So even though we almost know 12 of the 14 teams that are going to be in the playoffs, there's still a lot of intrigue for the teams that are in the playoffs.
I'm just infuriated with myself because I mentioned it on one of the shows. I don't remember that, Minnesota plus 700 looks pretty tasty. And I actually looked at the line 3 times and it had gone down just a little bit. And I just said, let me search around. Maybe I can find something better. And I never got around to it. And I knew it was just gold. I mean, what a dumb shit.
Yeah, there's some in-season situations we probably need to make a mental note. We did a good job last year, and we haven't done as much of brainstorming this year on some in-season. We did one show where we talked about what was coming up and where some of the teams were, but every once in a while, it's a good refresher for both of us. One other player I want to talk about, and then go ahead and answer the T's question. Mm-hmm. The TJ Watt experience, they've been healthy. He's been healthy all season long, and it's really been amazing for Pittsburgh. And if he goes down, and they've got the 3 games in 11 days, just like Kansas City does.
Sorry, I got this stupid gnat is driving me nuts. What did you say again?
Yeah. No, TJ Watt, they got 3 games in 11 days, and he's just so important.
Well, the Dr. Chow was saying that he anticipates him to play. The game's just too critical, but that he would switch sides and play the other side because of the injuries on the side of the foot that would not allow him to play on the same side of the line. So that's the best info we have at this point. I just saw Pickens as a no, did not practice.
Yeah, I mean, we have more injuries year after year after year at this time of year. And then you've got shortened weeks because the NFL is going to Wednesday games and Saturday games and so on and so forth. And they're picking on the better teams because they want all the good games to go in prime time. I mean, you've got 4 playoff teams on Saturday. And they switched Denver and the Chargers as well. That was not an original Thursday game. So the first 3 games this week involve 6 playoff teams, and 6 teams that are going to be unfavorably scheduled because of what they did.
Well, and they moved a bunch of week 17 games and time starts also, but not as exciting of teams as this week.
Yeah, and some of the teams they moved, I actually agree with in that, because they've got some of the Saturdays coming back the next Saturday, so at least they get a full week.
Cris was asking for past examples of two-way teaser wagers. Last night I had both. I had both sides of both games, so I'm running plus money parlays, plus money teasers through different games. And so you've got game number one, and that's the game that you care about. Game number two is a different start time and gives an opportunity to possibly, at that point, run something the other way if you want. But certainly by game number three, I've developed something where I'll have a parlay or a teaser going through that back end to preserve the equity. Because if I run them crisscross, I'm guaranteed to have a winning wager. So one side or the other is going to win. And if they're both plus money, then I'm guaranteed plus money at that point. And I can win both. So sometimes it works out well, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't work out, it's not a disaster. Last week or yesterday, I had Jesus. How was it?
It's a workload item.
This paperwork is just beyond ridiculous. I had somewhere around 5.6% on Minnesota to win over 9%. Here, 5.65% to win 8.90%. I don't want to risk 5.65% if I don't have to. So if I'm developing teasers or parlays that end on the other side, on the Chicago side, to mitigate exposure, God, you fucker, then it's to my benefit. Fuck! It's driving me nuts.
Now, let me interrupt 1 second with one comment, because I think he made the suggestion that the easier method was just to take Chicago money line.
Yeah, technically, but I do not like to, if you're going to hedge or if you're going to do something against an original bet or into other bets, you should make sure that that bet in itself is a positive EV proposition for you. So you don't hedge just for the sake of hedging. It has to be in itself a good bet on its own. So just negating that would I'm automatically giving up. I have no hope of winning a certain amount, and I don't like to do it that way.
I understand that completely, but at some point, if you're very successful in your method, like you mentioned, 5 point something to win 9 units, you probably went in not thinking that you were going to be in a position to win 9 units. So what's your comfort level?
I'm trying to set that stuff up right now, weekly. The problem is, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I did a horrible job of betting. I completely, screwed things up some way, somehow. The problem was that I had Seattle went down on me, and I had Chicago going through Seattle, and that cut off my Chicago, and I should not have done that. I had everything running through Minnesota early in the week, and then everything running to Chicago late in the week, and I didn't plan that out well enough. I did some. It was just a matter of the pairing of teams I did a poor job on. But so I did end up having 3.5 units to make a possible 6.5 units on Chicago and various things by the time the game started. That lost, so I lost 3.5, but I won the 8.9. I still make
right.
But But the Atlanta, Las Vegas, I had Atlanta plus, or I had Atlanta on the money line, and I took the Las Vegas. Actually, I take that back. The previous Monday, I had whoever, and I hedged with the last leg being Las Vegas plus 14 and a half. So I had an open plus 14 and a half, and I just took Atlanta on the money line in a couple of situations, and that, both sides won. So it was a plus 12, almost a plus 12 unit night, which was nice, but it should have been a much better weekend because I didn't make any money Sunday somehow with all those wins. So I'm an idiot.
It's a check and balance system, and it's even for those like you who are so ahead of the game in terms of how to layer this and so on. It's still a lesson in understanding if this team loses, how does it affect my overall risk and bottom line and so on. It's constantly a check and balance.
Yeah, I say I'm creating family trees. I mean, look at this. This is just a joke. It's that's just one page. I had to rewrite that 5 times. So it's I'm creating how they intersect, how they interact with each other, and somehow Chicago got by me, which pissed me off. But what was really bad was how few games I was cashing on the early board on Sunday. Every game won, and I was cashing jack shit. All the equity from all those wins actually just moved forward, and that's not where I want to be. So there's still some trial and error involved, but
it's a very cyclical thing because, as you said, this would have been a great week to do straight bets based on what you started the show off with and your record there. And the foundation, or I'll repeat it again, the foundation of all betting is still the straight bets. How you layer out and how you branch your family tree and put your artwork in the LA County Museum of Art with all your stuff and stuff like that. That comes still from the basic foundation of your model handicapping each game straight. And you go from there.
I was going to have you guys remind me I'm supposed to drink 32 ounces of water a little while ago. So.
Here you go. This will be interesting. The first check of the weather, I know it's Tuesday, is that it's going to be cold in a lot of places. So far, maybe one snow game and not much wind, but it's something to keep track of.
Well, where's the weather?
The weather could be in Chicago.
Are you just saying that in the broad scope, or have you checked?
I did check these places, and a lot of these places are between 21 and 30 degrees, depending on if they're night games like Green Bay and so on. So we have a lot of games that are going to be cold, but I haven't seen a lot of wind factored in, which could change.
Okay. I hate this week ahead. This is a dog with fleas up and down. Is there anything that stands out to you from this week? I'm behind this week, so I really.
Yeah. Well, I'm at the fact that we don't have 30 bowl games, but we have 46 bowl games now is just killing me with all the stuff there. So yes, I'm behind as well. Power rating rise. The only thing I've done is match my line to the power rating. I'd say the line that appears the most off against my power ratings is I don't have the Chargers as 3 points better than Denver. And that line is dropping a little bit, but that does not match my power rating, especially with the lack of home field. I do not have the Chargers 3 points better than Denver. A lot of power ratings, like I said, are circled, so I can't answer that question completely. If there's any, and I don't know the Minnesota-Seattle quarterback situation, but if Geno Smith was at full strength, I wouldn't make Minnesota 3.
Yeah, I'm surprised they're a full 3-point favorite. that Kansas City line looks insane. Like
I know.
Right?
I looked at it and I said, well, I guess Mahomes not playing. And Carson Wentz is not a good quarterback.
I don't think it's as insane as people think. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Now again, to me, changing from first to second quarterback depends on who you're playing. And I cannot emphasize that enough. The drop is different depending on if you're playing one type of team or another. And people don't get that, but that's true. In my opinion, Carson Wentz could be as much as a 10-point downgrade from Mahomes playing Houston. Now, I know that's an insane number.
Well, I buy the first half of that, but I'm trying to see because of the style of because
Carson Wentz will not anticipate, and Pat Mahomes will anticipate. Carson Wentz, last full game starting, he ran the ball something like 19 times for the Rams. I mean, it was embarrassing. If all he's going to do is run around in circles and so on, maybe it's not 10 points because Kansas City's defense, we've talked about this, how backup quarterbacks cause their own defense to stiffen up and take it upon themselves to be better. And the over-under is under 40. So we know that they expect more of a defensive struggle to begin with. Now, it may not be 10, but I will tell you this: it'll make a tremendous impact on Kansas City's offense. And
did I hear you right? Are you basing that on who they're playing, or who the difference between the starter and backup is?
It's a combination. If Carson Wentz was playing against a more passive defense like Cincinnati, I would downgrade Mahomes to Carson Wentz maybe 2 points less than I do against Houston. Houston is going to dictate play against Carson Wentz. Cincinnati wouldn't necessarily dictate play, just to use Cincinnati as an example. Not defensively, they wouldn't dictate play against Carson Wentz. Probably could have articulated better.
Stupid medical scan. Anything else that you can think of? We're going to do next. We're going to be back next Monday. We're going to be back Thursday, right?
We'll be back Thursday. Ted has some audio. All systems go for Thursday, and we'll have a little bit more time to digest. And yes, due to the holiday week and everything else, we're going to try to put something together at a time to be announced on Monday, right?
Yeah, I'm not that interested in the Monday Night Football game, so potentially we could do it in the evening. I would.
Yeah.
But I got this function to go to in the afternoon with all the famous sports handicappers and media personalities. So that's going to be a drunk fest. So the evening probably is not good.
Well, we'll have more information on Thursday, or maybe more information over the weekend. But we'll try to squeeze something in.
Let's shoot for the noon next week. We'll try to be noon Monday. So we'll update. We'll update on Thursday.
That sounds good. Everybody have a good day. It's going to be an interesting, tough week ahead. So we'll see.
Thanks for joining.